lecture hall buzzed with pre-class chatter as students filed in, coffee cups steaming and laptops flipping open. Malik, a 23-year-old black graduate student, with determined eyes and a stack of papers in his hand, stood at the front, nervously preparing his presentation. Across the room, Professor Whitaker, a white man in his late 50s with silver hair and cold, dismissive eyes, leaned back in his chair, arms folded. Malik cleared his throat and began, "Today I'll be presenting my research on African agricultural mathematics and its influence on modern computational theory." Whitaker interrupted with a chuckle. "You mean tribal counting methods? Oh, this should be entertaining." Laughter trickled through the hall. Malik froze but continued, his voice steady. Halfway through, Whitaker raised his hand. "Let me stop you there," he said loudly. "This isn't research, it's a fairy tale." The room erupted in awkward chuckles as Malik's face burned with embarrassment. His pages trembled in his hands, his future crumbling under the weight of a laugh. After the class ended, Malik walked out silently, his backpack slung low and his shoulders heavier than when he walked in. Outside, the autumn wind rushed through the campus trees, mirroring the storm brewing inside him. He passed students whispering behind cupped hands, some giving him sympathetic looks, others smirking. At the library steps he stopped, inhaled deeply, and looked at the pages still clutched in his hands. "They don't know," he whispered to himself. "They just don't know what this means." The pain of public humiliation clashed with the clarity of his vision. His research had value, even if they couldn't see it. He sat on the cold concrete step, flipping through the notes. The equations danced in front of him like ghosts of a heritage, unacknowledged. He didn't need Whitaker's approval, but he needed something: strength, validation, or perhaps revenge. For now, he'd settle for silence and one more deep breath. Later that evening, Malik sat at his desk under the yellow glow of his lamp. His tiny apartment was filled with books, African history, mathematics, code theory. The air smelled of ink and burnt coffee. A tablet glowed beside his open notebook, playing back a recording of his failed presentation. He winced at the professor's voice, but he didn't look away. Replaying the pain was necessary. "This is what they'll remember," he whispered. "Unless I make them forget it." He highlighted sections of his notes with newfound intensity, the humiliation sharpening his focus. This wasn't just about a grade. It was about being seen. The professor could mock his knowledge, but he couldn't erase it. Malik began sketching new diagrams. His eyes burned from staring too long, but he didn't stop. He was building something bigger now. Something undeniable. As midnight crept past, Malik opened an old leather-bound journal that once belonged to his grandfather. Its pages were filled with ancestral symbols, notes in 2 languages, and primitive calculation systems. His hand hovered over one page, the symbols matching those in his research. He traced them gently, as though touching memory itself. His grandfather had always said, "Our knowledge lives in patterns others choose not to see." Suddenly it wasn't just theory, it was legacy. Malik snapped a photo of the page and began digitizing the data. "Let's see you laugh at this," he muttered, the fire igniting in his chest. He wasn't just proving his work. He was reclaiming it. Every insult was now fuel. Every laugh, a countdown. By sunrise, Malik stood at his window, dark circles under his eyes, but a fierce clarity burning in them. The city stretched beyond, bathed in amber light. "They'll read my name one day," he whispered. Not as a student, as a source. The pain of yesterday hadn't vanished, but it had crystallized into a mission. His fingers typed with purpose, diagrams evolved into animated models. Malik smiled, not with arrogance but with quiet defiance. The story had begun with laughter, but it wouldn't end that way. He clicked save on the file, ancestral algorithms, a forgotten legacy. Outside, the morning wind picked up. And inside, something powerful was being born. The next morning, Malik sat across from his mother in their modest kitchen, sunlight pouring through the window like a gentle reminder of home. She stirred her tea silently, watching him with eyes that had weathered too much. "He laughed at you?" she asked softly. Malik nodded. "In front of everyone." She placed her hand over his. "That pain you feel, it's real. But it's not new. Our people have always had to shout just to be heard." Her voice was calm but carried generations of strength. Malik looked at her, a flicker of shame and fire in his expression. "What if I can't make them listen?" he asked. She leaned in. "Then you make it so they can't ignore you." Malik sat straighter. This wasn't just about a grade or a professor. It was about a legacy. Hers, his grandfather's, his. He rose from the table, with a silent promise burning behind his eyes. Later that day, Malik met with Dr. Lani Okafor, a visiting professor of African history, known for her groundbreaking work on pre-colonial mathematics. Her office was lined with texts older than the university itself. Malik sat cautiously, clutching his notes like a lifeline. "I've read some of your published theories," Dr. Okafor said, peering at him through thin glasses. "But why come to me?" Malik exhaled. "Because I think what I've found, this framework, it builds on what you started, and no one else will even hear me out." She took the notes, scanning them with intensity. Then her eyes lifted, sharpened. "Where did you find these sequences?" "From my grandfather's journals, and from lived memory," Malik replied. A long pause. Then with a smile she said, "You're not wrong, Malik. This is worth pursuing." For the first time in days, Malik felt a small, honest breath of hope. That night, Malik stood in front of his bedroom mirror rehearsing his pitch. "These aren't just patterns. They're coded knowledge systems," he said aloud, mimicking confidence. "Mathematical frameworks passed down through oral tradition." He stopped, stared at himself. His voice still trembled on certain words. Again. Stronger. Must. Again. Louder. They didn't teach this because they didn't know how to classify it. His tone sharpened, now commanding. With each repetition, the words hit with more weight, more conviction. He wasn't just preparing to present data. He was preparing to reclaim stolen recognition. He lowered his notes and looked into his own eyes. "You don't need permission to speak the truth," he whispered. In that quiet, Malik wasn't the nervous student anymore. He was the author of something bigger, something meant to be heard. The next morning, Malik returned to campus with fire in his step. As he walked past the main library, a few students from the class glanced his way. One girl smiled with encouragement. Another turned away, uncomfortable. He entered the research lab, head held high. A whiteboard on the far wall was blank, until Malik uncapped a marker and began mapping a theory diagram across it, line by line, symbol by symbol. Other students watched curiously as he worked. One whispered, "That's the guy from Whitaker's class." Malik didn't stop. He didn't flinch. The lines came alive on the board, revealing patterns so elegant they demanded attention. He stood back, breathing heavy but steady. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was claiming space. One by one, others came closer. Not mocking, not laughing, just watching. In the quiet of the evening, Malik sat alone in the library's back corner, surrounded by worn books and journal articles. He carefully tore through references, making annotations, cross-referencing footnotes with his grandfather's journals. Every discovery stitched together his past and future. As the clock ticked past midnight, he finally found it. An obscure paper from the 1970s, linking Yoruba binary patterns to modern computing logic. It was buried in an academic journal few had read, but it was there. The validation he needed. He grinned, barely breathing, and whispered, "They were always ahead." It wasn't just a personal victory, it was proof. It was reclamation. Malik scanned the paper into his growing digital archive. This wasn't the end of a battle. It was the beginning of a revolution. In a small campus cafe, Malik sat across from two students, graduate researchers from the computer science department. His diagrams were spread across the table, napkins marked with quick formulas and arrows. "It's elegant," one of them said, tapping a spiral pattern. "And scalable," the other added. Malik leaned in. "I'm not trying to rewrite math. I'm trying to reveal a foundation it ignored." The first student nodded. "You should present this. Dr. Single is reviewing interdisciplinary proposals this week." Malik hesitated. "You think they'd take me seriously?" A pause. "Not because of where it came from, but because it's brilliant." For the first time, Malik felt a door creak open, not through pity but genuine respect. As the students gathered their things, one said, "You might be ahead of your time, man. Just don't wait for permission." Malik watched them go, hope flickering again, but this time it was dangerous. Because now he had something to lose. Word spread quickly. Malik's diagram had appeared on a whiteboard in the interdisciplinary commons, left behind after a study session. The next day, 2 professors were seen discussing it. By the third day, a visiting AI researcher cited it in a departmental meeting, without knowing who created it. Dr. Whitaker heard the rumor. He stood silently in the faculty lounge, coffee untouched, watching as colleagues murmured about that new pattern synthesis. His jaw tightened. He knew the shape. He knew the style. But it couldn't be Malik. Could it? Later that afternoon, he passed Malik in the hallway. Malik nodded respectfully. Whitaker said nothing, just stared, as if peering through him. Behind those cold eyes, calculation churned. This wasn't just an upstart student. This was a threat. And threats, Whitaker had learned long ago, were best handled before they grew into challenges. The next week, Malik submitted his interdisciplinary proposal to Dr. Single's office. It was his boldest move yet. He had included data models, historical lineage, and a proposed application for machine learning architecture. 2 days later, the rejection email arrived. No feedback. Just a curt notice, insufficient theoretical grounding. Malik stared at the screen, numb. Had they even read it? He checked with Dr. Okafor. She hadn't been consulted, despite being listed as a reference. Something wasn't right. That night, Malik logged into the faculty server using the public reading terminal. He found his proposal in the system, marked flagged, internal review. His name had been removed from the file metadata. In its place, the initials RW. His chest tightened. Whitaker. It wasn't just sabotage, it was theft. He stared at the screen in disbelief, heart pounding, rage igniting. The system wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do. The next day, Malik stormed into Dr. Okafor's office, paper in hand. "He stole it," he said, voice shaking. She read the metadata and froze. "These are his initials," she said quietly. "And this is your work." Malik paced the room. "I need to go to the board. I need to call him out." Okafor stood and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Listen to me. You're not wrong, but you're alone. Right now it's your word against his, and he's got tenure." Malik looked up, betrayed twice, once by the system, and now by its silence. "So what do I do? Just let him take it?" Okafor's lowered. "No, you build something so public, so undeniable, that the world sees the theft for what it is, not a whisper, a spotlight." Malik breathed deeply. The fire didn't die. It changed shape. From eruption to strategy. Pole. That night Malik opened a fresh file on his laptop. Public Archive Draft 1. No more whispers. He compiled screenshots, journal scans, timelines, audio clips, and early versions of his research. He wrote a foreword. "This work is dedicated to every voice that was laughed out of the room, every hand that held knowledge before it was stolen, and every ancestor whose patterns are still speaking." He hit save, then publish, to a public academic blog. He didn't name Whitaker. Not yet. He didn't have to. The work spoke for itself. Within 24 hours, the post had over 12,000 shares. Graduate forums lit up. Professors debated it. Students reposted with hashtags like #patterns reclaimed. Malik didn't smile. He didn't need to. For the first time, his voice echoed further than the room that tried to silence him. Weeks passed. The academic blog post had sparked conversation, but Malik noticed a change. His views plateaued, shares slowed, and invitations to present mysteriously stopped. Then came the sting. While scrolling through a university newsletter, Malik froze. Headline: Dr. Richard Whittaker announces forthcoming book, Primitive Patterns, The Hidden Code in Ancient Cultures. Malik clicked the link. A short description mirrored his proposal. Almost word for word. Terms like ancestral binary systems and oral computation lineage had been ripped from his mouth and printed under someone else's name. He stood motionless. It wasn't just theft anymore. It was erasure. Whittaker had turned Malik's legacy into a career move. His mother's wisdom, his grandfather's pages, his nights spent breathing life into forgotten systems, written as discovery by a man who mocked it. Malik's hands clenched into fists. There was no mistaking it now. This wasn't academic rivalry. This was war. In a dim lecture auditorium, Dr. Whittaker spoke at a faculty roundtable. A projector displayed images from his upcoming book, tribal symbols, ancient number grids, and the same sequence Malik had drawn on a whiteboard weeks ago. "We've overlooked these systems for too long," Whittaker said, his voice polished and performative. "They reveal a proto-computational logic that predates Western models." The audience nodded. Some clapped. Malik watched from the last row, barely breathing. Whittaker gestured to a diagram. Malik's diagram. The irony stung. The same hands that had ripped it down now used it to claim genius. A professor beside Malik leaned over and whispered, "Incredible work, right?" Malik turned slowly, whispering back, "He didn't write that." The professor blinked, confused. Malik stood up and walked out, heart pounding. He had no intention of staying silent. Not now. Not ever again. That night, Malik recorded a video. No polish. No editing. Just him in a hoodie, seated at his desk, holding up a page from his original research journal. "You've seen the diagrams," he said into the camera. "You've seen the headlines, but here's what you haven't seen. Who made them?" He flipped through pages, dated, annotated, time-stamped, before Whittaker's book deal. "This isn't new knowledge. It's ancestral, it's documented, and it's mine." He included a screen recording of metadata from his submission to the research board. "My name was removed. His was added. You decide what that means." He uploaded the video with the title, "Stolen Patterns: A Letter to the Academic World." Within hours, it exploded. Shares poured in. Hashtags lit up. #credit thesaurus. #Malik speaks. #Whittaker stole this. Malik didn't want attention. He wanted truth. And the world was finally listening. The backlash was instant. Social media erupted. Academic bloggers dissected the evidence. Some called it plagiarism. Others defended Whittaker, claiming parallel discovery. But one leaked document shattered the defense. An internal faculty email showing Whittaker had access to Malik's original proposal weeks before submitting his book pitch. Screenshots flooded the web. Malik's video was now trending globally. Major news outlets picked it up. Whittaker issued a formal statement. "I categorically deny any misconduct." But the court of public opinion was merciless. Student groups rallied, alumni demanded investigation, and petitions circulated demanding accountability. Malik stood in the middle of the chaos, neither victorious nor broken. Just visible. And that visibility was power. For the first time, he wasn't yelling into the void. The void was yelling back. Inside a closed-door university tribunal, Malik sat on one side of a long wooden table. Whittaker sat across, flanked by lawyers. A university investigator addressed them both. "We've reviewed the documentation, the timelines, the server logs. It's clear the submitted material originated with Mr. Malik." Whittaker shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Malik stared straight ahead, silent but firm. "We'll be moving forward with academic disciplinary action," the investigator concluded. Whitaker's expression cracked for just a moment, a glimpse of the fall from grace. Malik didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply stood, gathered his binder, and walked out. In the hallway, students and faculty waited. When they saw him, they didn't cheer. They nodded. In respect. In recognition. Malik kept walking. The damage had been done. But so had the justice. And both would leave scars that shaped everything after. Malik sat in the university auditorium, lights dimmed, the stage glowing with anticipation. It wasn't a tribunal or lecture. It was the university's annual Innovation Symposium. And somehow, after all the noise, Malik had been selected to present. "You want the world to listen," Dr. Okafor had said. "Then don't speak about the theft, speak about the work." And now, here he was, alone on stage, his laptop glowing. As he stepped forward, a silent hush fell across the audience. No pomp. No drama. Just knowledge. Malik took a breath. What you're about to see didn't begin in a lab. It began in memory, in language, in rhythm, in systems once called primitive. A few heads turned. Some leaned in. He clicked the first slide, revealing the now famous diagram. "Let me show you what was always there." In that moment, Malik wasn't responding to Whitaker. He was restoring what had been lost, and reclaiming what had always been his. Malik spoke not with vengeance, but with reverence. He explained the numeric systems embedded in oral traditions, the binary logic in drumming patterns, the geometry in ancient textiles. "This isn't about discovering something new," he said. "It's about seeing what you refuse to see." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned. On the projector, side-by-side comparisons flashed, traditional West African symbols mapped onto modern data structures. Gasps echoed from the crowd. He concluded, "If this work makes you uncomfortable, good, because discomfort leads to reckoning." The audience rose in a standing ovation. Some clapped with awe, others with guilt. Malik didn't soak it in. He simply turned, gathered his notes, and walked off the stage. This wasn't for applause. This was for correction. For history. For everyone who had ever been told their knowledge was not knowledge at all. The symposium buzzed. Malik's talk had gone viral. Videos of his presentation flooded social platforms, news outlets, even academic journals. Meanwhile, Whitaker had vanished from public view. His book's release had been indefinitely postponed. Anonymous faculty sources confirmed an internal vote on revoking his chair position was underway. But Malik didn't celebrate. He barely looked at the headlines. He was already back at work, expanding the project into a collaborative platform where scholars could explore and build upon ancestral frameworks. "Not just mine," he told Dr. Okafor. "Ours." She smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "That's what makes it revolutionary." Malik nodded, not with ego, but clarity. The goal had never been fame. It had always been visibility, reclamation, and access. The truth wasn't just out. It was being shared. In a quiet campus courtyard, Malik met with a group of Black undergraduate students. Some were STEM majors, others from the humanities. One young woman asked, "How did you keep going when nobody believed you?" Malik looked at her, pausing before he answered. "Because I believed me," he said. "And because I carry people who never got the chance to speak." He pulled out a copy of his now published academic paper. "This belongs to all of us." One student held the pages like a sacred object. Another whispered, "I didn't know we could write history like this." Malik smiled. "We always have. They just didn't call it history." As the group huddled closer, sharing ideas, the camera of the moment pulled back, one student lighting the fire in others. Not with a scream, but with proof. That night, Malik returned home to find a letter slipped under his door. No return address. "Just a note," he laughed, "but we heard you." Inside was an old archival photograph, A classroom in Ghana, 1950s. At the front, Malik's grandfather, teaching children with chalk-drawn symbols that mirrored Malik's diagrams. He stared at the photo for a long time. A wave of emotion hit him, not rage, not sorrow, but something deeper. Continuity. Everything he had fought for wasn't just validated. It was connected. He pinned the photo to his wall, just above his desk. Below it, he scribbled a single phrase: return the narrative. The war wasn't over. The system still needed dismantling. But Malik had found his place in the story, and now he was writing the next chapter. The campus felt different now. Students who once passed Malik without a glance now greeted him with quiet nods. A few even stopped to thank him. But with visibility came isolation. He often sat alone in the library, headphones in, eyes scanning pages. Victory had not made him lighter. It had made him sharper. He watched how some professors avoided eye contact, while others leaned in with too much admiration, like trying to make up for staying silent. At times he wondered if they saw him or just the scandal. Still, the work continued. Malik wasn't chasing their approval anymore. He was building something they couldn't take: an archive, a curriculum, a language of resistance. As he closed his laptop one evening, he whispered, "Let them watch. I'm not here for their comfort." He didn't need to belong in their world. He was making a new one. Malik stood inside a community center downtown, not a classroom. No podium, no university crest. Just folding chairs, old speakers, and a projector casting ancestral patterns on a beige wall. The audience was different too. Babas, teachers, mothers, teens. He smiled. He smiled. "You've probably seen pieces of this on social media," he began. "But you've lived it longer than I've studied it." Heads nodded. He walked them through rhythms that mimicked binary, woven fabrics encoding numerical systems, proverbs functioning like algorithms. One elder in the front whispered, "My grandmother said this. She taught me this." Malik turned. "Exactly. It's never been lost. Just unrecognized." The crowd leaned in, not as students, but as custodians of the very knowledge he had defended. And in that humble space, far from the polished halls of academia, Malik finally felt something he hadn't in months: home. Outside the campus gates, media buzz had died down. But inside the archives something was happening. Dr. Okafor, flanked by two other faculty members, walked into the history department boardroom carrying a stack of papers. "We're proposing a new elective," she said. "Culturally rooted algorithms." One professor raised an eyebrow. "Interdisciplinary." "More than that," she replied. "Corrective." She handed out the syllabus, featuring works by Malik, his grandfather's translated notes, and supporting African scholars. A long pause followed. Finally, the department chair nodded. "It's overdue." The motion passed. Malik's work had transcended scandal. It had rewritten curriculum. Later that day, Dr. Okafor texted him a single line: "Approved. Semester 1. Malik stared at the screen, then exhaled. Not because of what it meant for him, but because now, no one could erase it again. Weeks later, Malik sat with his mother on their apartment balcony, the city quiet beneath the setting sun. She held the published journal issue in her hands, running her fingers slowly across his name. "Your grandfather would have cried," she said. Malik smiled gently. "I think he did. Through me." They didn't say much after that. They didn't need to. The wind rustled softly. Somewhere below, kids shouted, a car radio played a faint rhythm, and everything felt still, but full. Malik leaned back, his eyes closed to the sky. Not because he was finished, but because he had finally arrived. "They'll remember the name," his mother said. Malik nodded. "But more than that, they'll remember the knowledge." The last light of day hit the balcony. And in that moment, peace, earned and deserved, sat quietly between them. Malik visited his grandfather's grave, journal in hand, pages now digitized, published, and studied around the world. He knelt in the grass, laying a single copy of the research beside the stone. "They almost buried this with you," he whispered. "Almost." A breeze stirred the trees, and for a moment, it felt like an answer. Malik stood slowly, brushing dirt from his knees. In the distance, a group of children played near the fence, one of them tapping a stick in rhythmic beats, binary, if you listened closely. Malik smiled. "It's still alive," he said quietly. Then he turned and walked away, not from the past, but with it. His steps were steady, the path forward open. Because the story had always been bigger than him. And now, the world had finally heard its first verse. Months later, Malik stood backstage at a global education summit in Cape Town. The event hall buzzed with anticipation. Scholars, activists, and educators from across continents had gathered. His face appeared on a large screen above the stage. Malik Adu, reclaiming legacy through code. A volunteer handed him a mic. "You ready?" Malik smiled. "Always." As he walked into the spotlight, a wave of recognition swept over the audience. But Malik didn't stand at the podium. Instead, he walked to the edge of the stage, closer to the people. "What we call technology didn't start in Silicon Valley," he began. "It started in the soil, in rhythm, in memory, in places that were told they had nothing to offer." The crowd leaned in. Malik was no longer the student fighting to be heard. He was now the voice others carried forward. And his message would echo long after the lights went dark. As Malik spoke, the screen behind him shifted through timelines, ancient counting stones, indigenous knot systems, African fractals. "They told us our systems were primitive," he said. "But what they missed was that our systems were first." The auditorium was silent, reverent. He continued, "When knowledge isn't credited, it's not just theft, it's erasure. And what's erased doesn't die, it waits." Applause began softly, then swelled. Malik stepped back, letting the weight of his words settle. He didn't need to explain the pain anymore. He was now architecting the future from what was stolen in the past. A panel moderator approached with tear-filled eyes. "You didn't just give a talk," she whispered. "You gave us back something we didn't know we were missing." Malik bowed his head slightly. "It was never missing," he said. "Just silenced." The audience rose again, not in celebration, but in acknowledgement. After his keynote, Malik stepped into the hallway where young attendees waited to speak with him. A teenager from Brazil said, "Your story made me see my grandfather's farm in a new way." A girl from India said, "We've got patterns too, woven into our saris." Malik listened, not as a speaker, but as a student. "Then share them," he said. "Turn memory into movement." They nodded. Some asked for photos. Others shared books. But all of them shared urgency, the hunger to be heard on their own terms. One boy, no older than 12, approached last. "They say you exposed a fraud," he said. Malik knelt beside him. "I did something more," he replied. "I exposed the truth." The boy's eyes lit up. "Can I do that too?" Malik smiled. "You already are, just by asking." Legacy wasn't something left behind. It was something lit and passed forward. That night, Malik returned to his hotel room, stripped off his conference badge, and placed it beside the photo of his grandfather he always traveled with. He sat on the floor, barefoot, laptop open, journal beside him. No spotlight. No applause. Just a quiet room and the next line of code. He began typing. "Knowledge isn't given, it's remembered." Outside, city lights blinked like constellations. He could feel it, the shift. Not just in the institutions but in the air, the language, the questions people were asking. Malik wasn't done. He didn't want to be. There was too much left to document, decode, uplift. But for a moment, in that still space, he allowed himself one deep breath. Not of exhaustion, of arrival. Not the end. Not even the peak. Just the start of something irreversible. The next morning, a new voice began a lecture in a sunlit classroom halfway across the world. A young black woman stood before a chalkboard, writing Malik's name beside ancient numeric symbols. "Let's begin," she said, "with the knowledge they told us wasn't real." Her students leaned in, unaware they were part of a much larger awakening. Back in Malik's hometown, a mural had appeared overnight. It wasn't his face on the wall, but a pair of hands. One old, one young, both drawing the same spiral. Below them a phrase, "Truth doesn't die, it echoes." And somewhere, in a quiet apartment, Malik smiled as he saw it online. Not for the glory, but because the work had moved beyond him. The laughter had been silenced. The knowledge had survived. And now, it had found 1,000 new voices.